get comfortable here. Get the water there, got the mics. You know, I had the privilege of interviewing President Barack Obama just a few months ago, but I'm a little starstruck today. I'm really excited to interview these coaches. These are two phenomenal coaches, two phenomenal leaders who just happen to be Latino as well. And I want to celebrate that first. One of the things I tell the coaches before we came out was I'd like to converge worlds. I think that it's always more interesting and more exciting to hear from people that are outside of our industry, especially people that are achieving great things. So we are delighted to have them both with us here today. And we're delighted to be at the Final Four. How about that? Well, look, gentlemen, I kind of feel like my job today is just to tee up a couple thoughts and get out of the way, because people want to hear from you. You guys have built phenomenal programs, like I said before, and you're great leaders. And I want the folks to hear a little bit about what it took, what are some of the disciplines, what are some of the philosophies that have gotten to you to where you are today. So I'll start with you, Frank. Tell us a little bit about yourself briefly, and I'm going to float the word leadership out there. And I just want you to say whatever comes to your mind when it comes to the topic of leadership. So, Frank.
I didn't know where to go. Who's the other guy that was on the screen when the hair is screen? I thought we had another person, but I'll say to us here. Yeah, my Armando, wherever you're at, I appreciate you saying Martin, but it's actually Francisco. So there you go. You know, and I said this once before, Armando. My biggest regret in my journey in this business is that I allowed people to call me Frank Martin rather than going by Francisco Martin, which is my proper name, my given name, and the one that my family is really proud.
I didn't want to assume because you're bigger than me and you could. What does need to?
But now, real quick, I'm first person in my family born in the United States. My family migrated from Cuba in 1961. Went to New Jersey, and my mom was 8 months pregnant in Kearney, New Jersey. My dad came home from work. It's one of the, I had nothing against anyone from Jersey because I love Jersey, but it's one of the only good things that he ever did in my life, which is he walked in when she was 8 months pregnant. He told her, it's too cold to raise a family in New Jersey. And we're moving to Miami. I put her in a car, drove from Kearney to Miami, and a month later I was born in 1966 and grew up in that Orange Bowl community. Anyone that's familiar with the city of Miami, it's just north of what's called Little Havana, but Little Havana was our community. It's the way we viewed it. And not a very good basketball player, but our high school coach believed in us, gave us hope that we can be good at basketball. Back then, Miami had no college basketball. When I mean Miami, I'm not just about the university, I'm about there's no basketball in South Florida at any level. And so growing up as a football player, went to a high school game one day when I was in 9th grade, and I said, wow, this place is incredible. And, you know, we used to play at the park and all that. And but long story short, without boring you with too many details, I started coaching at the age of 19. I tore up my knee my freshman year in college, and I was frustrated. This was at 18 when I tore up my knee. I was frustrated, and I quit school. And a guy that's in the room here right now was one of our coaches when I was young, Sergio Rocco, and he was the JV coach at our high school. And I still lived in the neighborhood, and he asked me, why don't you come over and help me coach the JV team? And I'm like 19, man, I'm in Miami. I want to make money. South Beach was just starting to boom because South Beach used to be a retirement community. I'm like, I want to be out there, man. I ain't got no interest in coaching. Are you kidding me? I'd imagine coaching myself. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm so happy I said yes. Here we are. After 16 years, high school math teacher, an incredible run that I've been fortunate to be a part of because of basketball. I'm in this room. I've met someone like Gary because of basketball. It's that's the part when he asked me if I wanted to be here today. We get so wound up in our world sometimes that we don't see the relationships that we can all create. Because let's be honest, whether it's real estate or basketball, we're not trying to sell a house. We're trying to motivate people. And it's the same way coaching. I'm not trying to win a game. I'm trying to motivate people. And when we can understand those steps, and it's what life's taught me. So when you ask me about leadership, Garrett, I tell our players this all the time because I ask our players to be leaders. I can't tell you how to lead. You got to figure out, number one, do you want that responsibility? I can't make you take it. And if you don't want to take it, that doesn't make you a bad leader. And if you don't want to take it, there's no set way to lead. If you go to the bookstore and you look for books on whatever, a couple shelves, you go look at books for leadership, and it's a never-ending row of books. You know why? Because there's not a set way to lead. Because we're human beings. You don't lead a company. You don't lead a basketball. You lead the people that you're around. And to lead people, we're all different. We all have to interact in different ways. And unfortunately, for the poor guy I was yelling at on the bench on that clip, sometimes you got to do that. Especially when you're dealing with a 17, 18-year-old. That has nothing to do with the score of the game. That has to do with trying to change the life of a 17-year-old and taking advantage of a moment to make them understand why it's so important when you sign up to be in a team sport that your job is to elevate everybody, not just yourself. And that you have to make sure their leadership that I think, and in today's day and age, where times have changed so much just in the past 3 years, social media, we tend to pay attention, at least the young people around, they tend. Back in the day, we were worried about what our parents, our teacher, and our coach said to us. Now, most people, not just young people, most people, they're more interested on social media attention than they are in the words of those people. And we got to comprehend that dynamic as we go through it every day. But leadership, in my cliff notes of it, Gary, I don't think there's a set way to lead. I think we got to be. Here's the one thing you can't do if you ever want to lead: don't be someone you're not. Be who you are.
Yeah.
Be willing to be who you are.
Tony, good to have you. Nice to meet you.
Letting the be.
Same question for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then what the word leadership means to you.
I can tell you right now, I want to probably regurgitate a lot of what things.
They're right. They're our family.
My parents came here in 1961 as well. My dad had to escape from Cuba. My parents weren't married. So when my dad got here to the United States, he couldn't claim my mom. But my mom was educated in the United States, so she got her visa through every university where she went to school at Atlanta. So back then, you couldn't fly from my dad to the United States because of the Cold War. So my mom had to live in Spain for 9 months on her own. They told me the story, so my dad would send letters with money so my mom can live because she couldn't get a job over there. And 9 months later, she came to the United States and they moved to New Jersey. I was born in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1967. And then our families, at that time, my dad was trying to claim some of his relatives. I could tell you this story because it's something that I think, and Frank mentioned it, is the sacrifices that our families made. And I think we're all a product of sacrifice. Everybody in this room, right, that has our Latin heritage is somebody sacrificed for us to be here.
You go, and they're family.
My parents brought both my uncles, their wives, my cousins, and we lived in a one-bedroom duplex. My parents, for a month and a half, at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, would get an mattress, put it in the back of a Volkswagen station wagon, and that's where they would sleep. So the rest of the family would be in the house. And, the windows were down, and they would sleep there, wake up in the morning, and then they'd start their day. I was fortunate. I didn't have to sleep in the car. I had a little crib in my parents' room where my uncle and aunt would stay. And I remember the first day I woke up, I said, "You're not my mom." Like, they remember all that, and I remember all those stories. Like Frank, I grew up in Little Havana, Miami. My dad played baseball in Cuba. He played for the Havana Sugar Cane, which is like a AAA ball club. So I grew up playing baseball. And a gentleman by the name of Billy Long at Carlway Elementary one day brought me out and put me on the court and got me playing basketball. And I got hooked. I played basketball all the time, went to college, went to Sterling College out in Kansas, was a dual sport athlete, came back home and got my first job from my mom. She was the principal at La Prodesiva Presbyterian School, which was 4 blocks away from Miami Senior High School. And that's where I kind of began my career. And I want you to know that something Frank said to me when I first got into coaching. You know how he mentions his name, Francisco Mantini?
Yeah.
He was the one that told me, "Hey, quit letting people calling you Pujol. Your name is Pujol." And I'd never forget that. And to this day, now, my name is Antonio, but everybody calls me Tony. But if you listen, Pujol. And Frank was the one that got them started. As far as leadership, I'm listening to Frank, and by the way, all I can tell you is if you spend 10 minutes speaking with him, the amount of knowledge that you're going to receive is, I consider him a mentor. I can tell you this, for me,
That makes me feel old. You're my age.
I can tell you this, for me, the way I look at leadership, you're here to serve. So when I think of that, I'm not the guy that gets results to English in North Alabama men's basketball program. I'm the guy that takes care of the people that get results. My focus is to make sure that I'm creating an environment for everybody in the organization to be at their absolute best. So when Frank talks about motivating people, I believe that every day that we wake up and we fill our lungs with air, we should already be inspired. So we talk constantly about waking up and being inspired on that day, because when you're inspired, you inspire others. The next thing we talk about with our guys is we want to create junior leaders. So leaders, for them to be at their absolute best, we have to create an environment that's safe for them so that they can just go out there and make the mistakes. Because one thing I've learned about making mistakes, if you don't make them, you got a front row seat looking up at greatness. Okay, you're not gonna get out of if you can't get out of the comfort zone. This is where you'll be, and that's where you'll stay. And then the last thing we tell them is, finish the day fulfilled. Right, whatever we did throughout that day, make sure that you just finish the day fulfilled with all the things that you've accomplished, and then the next day just repeat it over again. So again, I just think when I think of leadership, I think it's us serving people.
When you were both young and so evident, right? I have to say that I lost my mom earlier this month, and I wrote a blog after she passed that I entitled "Nobody Makes It on Their Own." And those of us that are in business, entrepreneurs, we hear all the time people talk about how they made it on their own, how nobody helped them, and blah, 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 blah. And I just always cringe when people do that, because nobody makes it on their own. Whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, somebody is responsible for you being in this room here today. Business owners or team leaders do we have in the audience here today? Raise your hand. So you got a lot of business owners, a lot of team leaders here. And so the next question is really for them. You could be a great coach and you can be a great leader, but you're going to win games with talent as well. And there's a book that I love called Good Great by Jim Collins. And he talks about, uses metaphorically, getting the right people in the bus and the right people in the right seats in the bus, right? And it's a very provocative thought when you think about it. But in the real estate business, or the mortgage banking business, or the title business, wherever you might be working today, recruiting is a huge part of the job. That's just That's just reality. Recruiting is a big part of your jobs, not just players, but also your staff, your coaching team, all of the above. I'd love to hear your thoughts around recruiting, your philosophies around it, and even some of the, talking points that you utilize when you're talking, especially to a young person, and really trying to encourage them to be part of your team because you think they belong in your bus. So a lot of ways to look at that, how you evaluate talent, but at the end of the day, how do you recruit people?
It's really complicated right now. We're in a whole bit where everyone is so centered on individual attention that we tend, and not just individual attention, but individual success, on monetary success, that we've lost sight of the journey. And it's no different in the world of basketball recruiting. I mean, you folks obviously recruit employees to operate a business. The most important people that I have to recruit every day is my staff before I worry about the players. Because if you don't have the right assistant coaches, your organization has no chance to succeed. I can preach leadership all I want. If that next set of voices that connects with the players, that do all the legwork in recruiting the players, is sending a different message than the one I'm so-called leading, it doesn't work. And then when you're recruiting the players, in your world, the folks that are going to be out there trying to convince me to buy a home, to make the deal that needs to happen for your business to operate. We live in a world of we're in the Final Four. If we don't get our teams into the NCAA tournament, we lose our jobs. It's just and I don't say that for anyone to feel bad. We signed up for the job. We understand what we're walking into, and we understand the expectation, so we can't complain. That goes back to my grandmother, Gary. We spend too much time worrying about what we don't have rather than worrying about what we do have and building. But as you're going out to recruit, my knowledge of basketball, I don't care how good it is, it's irrelevant if I don't have the right player in my program. And their level of talent doesn't show if they don't connect with our vision. And a lot of times we sacrifice talent for culture. And that might work today, maybe tomorrow, but it's going to fall apart by next week. And we use that word culture a lot. Well, in our world, culture is getting really difficult because we're struggling to keep the same. You don't build culture with sayings on the wall. You don't build culture by standing up and talking to it if the people in front of you are different every single year. And in our world, our rosters are constantly evolving. We don't have the same group of people. So the challenge of building culture is gotten really complicated. And then the way culture works is the way, real quick, is I tell our players all the time, don't get this twisted now. I got hired here before any of you signed up to get here. The reason all of you are here is because I believe in you. If not, I would have brought you here. So when the times get difficult, don't make me the enemy. But I'm the caretaker of our culture. And it's my job to make sure that the culture that we're going to be known for is always respected. Now, as you respect that culture and fight for it, then I'll let you add it, your little taste, your flavor to our culture to make the culture bigger and better. That's the vision, and that's how we do it.
Tell us about how you recruit, Tony.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's two things that we tell our staff constantly about who we bring into the program, which I believe what Frank just says is accurate. The two things that help winning the most are who you bring in and who you recruit, right? The players and staff. But when it comes to the individual players, one thing we tell our guys, there's two guys that we can never bring into the program. And I think this applies to the business world as well. You can't bring in somebody that can't. Okay, somebody that cannot help you succeed. And you can't bring in somebody that won't. Okay, somebody that can do it, but won't buy into the culture, won't buy into the vision of what you're trying to create. So those are the 2 points. I agree with Frank. I think the people that you surround yourself the ones that are in the trenches. Like I said earlier, my job is to take care of those people. Those people have to have a sense of loyalty to not only myself, but the vision and the culture of our program. That's how it works. That's how you get those kids to be inspired to come out every day and compete. So when it comes to the sense of loyalty, when it comes to the recruiting process, one of the things that we constantly are talking to our guys is we just believe in making better people, not basketball players. Because the reality is basketball for most of these guys is going to end probably at the age of 30, and if they're lucky to 33. What are they doing from 33 to 7? That's our focus, is to make sure that they walk out with the things that they need that are going to be the most helpful in their career.
Our theme is that I hear consistently from the two of you: authenticity, number one. When we talked about leadership a little bit, Frank, your response to that is, everybody has their own way of leading. Everybody has their own style. They have to be authentic first, and that's what's going to resonate with people. Talk about culture a lot. In the real estate industry, I'll tell you, we deal with that issue quite a bit because everybody talks about culture. Right? Our culture this, our culture that. We're all in the culture. Very few have the discipline to actually execute on that. I'll tell you what I mean. The real estate business, we're enamored by top producers, right? We want top producers on our team, people who sell a lot of homes, people who do a lot of transactions, bring a lot of revenue. We don't think enough about culture and whether or not people like that, which sometimes they're terrific. So I'm not saying that top producers aren't great, but they're not always there, right? So sometimes you've got a top producing athlete, right, that's got all the talent and all the skill of the world, but it doesn't fit into your culture. It actually undermines the overall success of the team. It takes a lot of discipline to walk away from a talented player or from a top producing agent. What do you guys have to say about that? I think I'm kind of speaking to the audience, but it does take discipline. No.
We're in a society right now where patience is no longer.
There's no patience.
You go to a steakhouse where the steaks are $90 each, and you expect them to put food in front of you as soon as you sit down. Yeah, it's unbelievable, and that takes time. It's the good stuff takes time. And to build the people that are going to respect your organization takes patience. But nobody has patience anymore. In our world, I say this all the time, we recruit high school kids to come to a college campus. It's a completely different game, different environment. And when they get on our campus, we have to convince them on how they have to adjust to be able to succeed on a college campus. Well, there's two ways of doing it with the ones that don't want to adapt. Because that's the bottom line. We're asking people to sacrifice so they can fit in, so they can grow, so they can be a part of something. You can either yell at them a lot and be really difficult on them to get them to change. Right now, you do that, you're viewed as that. By the way, those clips that they showed were from 14 years ago. You do that today,
No. It's going to be all over social media.
it's unbelievable. All of a sudden, I'm a bad human being, and everything that you did right for the previous 56 years is out the window. So we have to comprehend the moment. That doesn't mean we got to sacrifice our values or what we do. The second way to get people to change, which is, I'm a school teacher, it's through education. But education takes time. I've raised, my wife who's sitting here on you, we've raised up to now 3 children, the youngest one 15, the oldest one 23. The 23-year-old, it's still going on. That education hasn't stopped. The patience for his growth hasn't stopped. So education takes an eternity. And in our line of work, in your guys' line of work, where you got to meet a certain quota, where everything is red and black, based on if you're in the right side, everyone keeps their job. If you're on the wrong side, a bunch of people will be looking for jobs.
And what I heard is that there is always the opportunity to, I don't want to say change people, but to help guide people to become a part of that culture.
We can't, in this moment we're in right now, we got to be careful how strict and mandating we are. You can't, when I told our players, when I was their age, my ADD medicine, because I had some of that, was that pat. I didn't like that pat. And I'm not advocating for a paddle. Don't misunderstand. Okay? But that made me pay attention. It's not what it needs to be. So it's the same way with when you're dealing with people, understanding that. But we got to be patient, but very stern and direct on expectations. And people that are unwilling to adapt to your expectations, I'm just telling you, this is the other thing I tell our players. You need to change, because if you don't change, they change me. And we have to understand that moment and comprehend that I'm no longer that 17-year-old kid that was not by myself, but not in charge of something. Now I'm responsible, not just for the people in my locker room, but for the lives of my wife and my children. And I've got to make difficult decisions. And some of those decisions don't feel good when you're in the moment and you have to make them, but you cannot carry dead weight. Because dead weight, you know what it does if they put them in your pocket out in the ocean, now you're going down. And you got to make sure that you have to make sure that if that moment arises, you got to do it. See, everyone wants that leadership responsibility for the celebration moments. To sit up here and kind of speak and, wow, that guy's really smart. You know where leadership gets really difficult? When you got to have that conversation with that person that you have to cut loose. But if you're not willing to make that decision, you're going to fail. And you have to understand this.
So going back to what you were saying about Premier God.
Yep.
To me, I think when you look at that situation, you got to see where the root of the issue is. Everybody in here understands what's going on with college athletics, especially with, football, basketball, sports with this sport. I'm not trying to advocate for the student athlete, the coaches, whatever, but what I'm trying to say is the student athletes did not create the sport. Sport was created by the leaders of today. So now what we got to do is we got to evaluate ourselves. And what are we doing? Because everybody wants to point at kids and they want to point at that worker, right? That individual, he's a certain way. Well, he's a certain way. Why? What are we creating as leaders of today? Because that's who we are. We talk to them about they're the leaders of tomorrow. Well, we're the leaders right now. What are we doing to show them that we're not off track, that we got things in order? So when we think about what you're saying about workers or players like that, yeah, what they can't do is they can't tear at the very fabric of what you're trying to create. But that's on us.
Right.
We have to guide and show them that this is the way it is. And it's hard for these kids now to not get in the fort when they have other opportunities, NIL money. I mean, all these things now are presented.
Yep.
You expect them to do.
Yep.
So I think it's, what are we doing? What are we creating? And how can we help them? Because they're like, I'll be honest with you, when I was 17, 18 years old, I didn't know anything. If somebody flashed money in front of me and I was a college athlete, why wouldn't I take it? Luckily, I have people around me that would tell me that this is not the only thing. There's other things in life that are gonna transcend them. Because the reality is, this is something that we have to understand as leaders today. Our assignment is locked into their destiny. What we do is what they're going to be in the future.
That's a really, really great quote. Even though there's a lot of people here that I'm sure are parents, some of us that just became grandparents, that became a grandparent. I love it. It's not overrated. But, somebody told me a long time ago, and my son's here, so, maybe he can disagree if he wants, but that...
He's a heck of a basketball.
He's got a good jump shot. Is that, your kid, you can tell them anything you want, but they're going to learn far more about what they see than what they hear. And that's what I've just heard you say. It is, what kind of example are you set for that in terms of leadership? All right, so Final Four. The 4 teams in the Final Four. None of them have a McDonald's All-American on their team. There isn't a team that was seated in the top 3 seats in their bracket. So both these things are unprecedented.
Two of them are from South Florida.
2 over South Florida. And I fully expect that one will be from Alabama next year and one will be from Massachusetts. Wouldn't that be something? But how do you reconcile it? I mean, what sort of commentary does that make on the game, good or bad? I mean, I think it's good, but tell me what you think.
I think it's a moment that's been coming. If you actually pay attention year after year after year, because of the freshmen, I say this all the time. I say it in recruiting because I want people, parents, whoever, to understand. Fans love freshmen. Coaches love seniors. That's a lot of times fans get mad at coaches because you read all this overhyped 17-year-old that you think is going to walk into a room that's led by 23-year-olds. I don't know about you. There's a big difference in me from 17 to 23.
Yeah.
And it takes a special 17-year-old to walk into a room and take over the job of a 23-year-old that's been working at something for the last 4 or 5 years. And so, but it's been coming. The older teams are the ones winning. And number 2, up until about 5 years ago, the 16 seed had never been the one.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden that happened.
It's happened twice.
And now it's happened twice. And VCU and George Mason made the Final Four from smaller conferences some years ago. And now it's starting to become more of a regular deal. Like the year we went to the Final Four, 2017, they weren't small name schools. Oregon, South Carolina, Gonzaga. First time they all made the Final Four.
Yep.
And so it's, I just think there's more people playing basketball than there used to be because of technology. It's like, listen, your industry is no different than ours. There's some people that people think are really good at their jobs that actually stink at their jobs in our business. I might be one of them. But because of technology, you better be good at your job, because if not, you get exposed right away. And the whole world's going to know why you're a failure at your job. And since technology's done that, I think it's leveled the playing field with coaches. Kids from Miami are playing in tournaments with kids from San Diego. So there's less of that unknown when they get to college. And I just think we've created in our sport because of transferring, not the NIL. The NIL is I'm not going to say it's a problem because I advocated for that change behind the scenes. The transferring with no repercussions, that's a problem. Because in the world of education, what are we teaching 18-year-olds? Are we telling them to run away from difficulty? Now, if they're in a program where it's not fair, where they don't get along with people, where the athletic director decides to fire the coach, or here's the other part, because we get blamed. Well, I share numbers. I'm as transparent as any human being that you'll ever see. I don't hide anything. I made a decision to leave Kansas State University to go to the University of South Carolina in 2012. I had to pay one check, 40% of $1.25 million for the decision I made. That hurt to write the IRS that check. That check hurt. But I made the choice to leave, so I had to pay the pipe. Well, we're letting young kids think that they can get up and leave, and there's no repercussions. My oldest son wanted to transfer 3 years ago, Gary. And he came because he was unhappy with his playing time. And he created the problem. And he came and said, Dad, I'll transfer. I said, okay. Number one, you're a Martin. You don't quit in the middle of a job. I said, number two, where are you going? He said, I don't know. I said, so let me give you some advice. It's not real smart to leave a job if you don't got a job. I said, and so you understand, if you choose to walk away, because it's your life, not mine. You choose to walk away, I'm supposed to be your dad. I will help you. I'm paying your bills, man. So you better have a scholarship if you expect me to pay for college. And he wasn't happy with me for about 3 months. And he would speak to Anya, my wife, but he wouldn't speak to me. But he went back and handled his business the right way with his coach and finished the year and did things the right way. And now I ended up coaching. Don't ask me why, because he pisses me off every day, but I have to take on us. But it's an incredible journey. It's you know, the challenges that we have right now with the transferring, kids leaving, being able to hold people at stake. This is the problem that we have to have. So, these guys that try here, okay? I walk in the locker room and address our team after a win or a loss. It don't matter. And I'm in the locker room addressing the team as soon as the game ends, and they can be really happy or really pissed. It don't matter. As soon as I shut up and we say break, they don't speak to one another. They go back to their locker and get on their phones to see what people got to say about it. It's sad, man, because we're losing. Remember what I said when we started? Like I said, this. By the way, full transparency. In 1984, when Sergio hired me to be his assistant junior varsity basketball coach, I worked at a bank and I had just passed my real estate exam. And I didn't know this back then, but I would have failed because I would have been trying to sell houses. And you don't sell houses; you sell yourself to convince people to believe in what you're saying. And you have to make sure that you will motivate people to buy a house, not sell. Well, right. So I don't mean to speak out of line, but it's the same way in coaching.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same way coaching. And it's, so I don't know. We're in a changing moment right now. And like Tony said, there's some rules that have been thrown at us. What can we do? We can either sit around and complain. Well, then how do we expect young people to grow up and be successful if we complain?
Yeah.
Change is part of life. It's coming. Sometimes we choose change. Sometimes change chooses us. If you don't adapt when that change comes and you don't grow, Nick Saban had the greatest line of all time. He said the dinosaurs didn't adapt. Look what happened to that.
Like you said, I think the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing is a couple of things. Obviously, you've got older groups. The other day I was watching a game. I think one of the players at Drake University, when he was at the free throw line, and they were talking how he is a 26-year-old grad transfer. And I'm saying to myself, wow, there's a 26-year-old out there. You know what I mean? So to me, I agree with Frank. I think you're seeing a lot of this happening because no McDonald's All-American, because some of these teams are old. They've gone ahead and got to that portal. They've gotten transfers in, and they've done that. And I just think it's always good for basketball for programs like FAU to make it.
Yep.
That's part of the game, mystique of the Final Four when you have that Cinderella. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to watching these games.
I got to tell you, I ended my college basketball career with 1 year worth of eligibility left. I still had a dream, was thinking I'm going to be back out there playing because I have that 1 year left. So 59-year-old college player, right? Grad transfer.
Can you rebound the ball? Did you rebound the ball?
First of all, I can't thank you enough for being here. It was great chatting with you, getting to know you a little bit. I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship. Antonio, Francisco, gracias.
As we for